I didn't fall into this sport by watching the sport and then falling in love with it. I had a puncture in a Zwift race. Not joking.
So welcome back to the Peak Talk interview series. Who is Benji Naesen? And is he one of the most revered cycling experts and journalists in the world at the moment? We're going to talk about his childhood, his journey into cycling, which is very non-traditional, and all about his fitness gains and how he got into cycling.
Draw me like one of your French girls.
Between us, we've got about 200 kilograms of mediocre cycling talent. But before we get into FTP tests and the weight loss, tell us who you are and how you got into cycling analysis and how you got so good at that before really even, from my point of view, riding a bike.
I would consider myself a YouTuber, as in my main focus is trying to make as good content as possible on YouTube so that people can enjoy it. That's how I perceive that. But how did I begin? It's like, what I currently do is I'm a host on the Lanteren Rouge cycling podcast where we analyze cycling races, World Tour, men's and women's. And in that way, we analyze it after the race finishes. We get it up as fast as possible so that people know what happened in the race, if they didn't watch it, and if they did watch it, have some analysis on what they just watched. That is for beginners and also advanced viewers of the sport. So that's number one. That's activity number one. Activity number two is I've got my own YouTube channel, which is just called Benji Naesen. Very original, I know. It's not like some cool name like Peak Torque. I didn't fall into this sport by watching the sport and then falling in love with it. That's part of this process, but it originally started for me where I was a football player as a kiddo. So you're thinking 9-year-old, 10-year-old Benji, the kiddo on the field, pretty good player, not gonna lie. Maybe I'm just flexing myself right now as a kid, but I was relatively good. And I switched positions all the time, first attacker, then midfielder, then defender. And I had 1 year where I was actually a good defender, that I became captain of the team, and I was really proud of that. But I didn't have the best year anymore. So we're talking at the age of 12 or something. At this point, I had a coach a few years back where he would come get me from my house and bring me to practice. But sometimes his son was also with me with that, and he played a game called Pro Cycling Manager. So through that son, I saw him play a Paris-Roubaix stage on the game, Pro Cycling Manager. That looks pretty cool. Tom Bonen, I know that name. I hear that name on the news in Belgium. We get force-fed cobblestone names as a kid in Belgium. But when I saw that game, I was like, I want to try that. And I think a week or two later, my mom came home with like a magazine with the game Pro Cycling Manager 2005 attached to it, I reckon. So let's say I was about 10 when I got that or something, roughly. Averagely, then obsessively, to the point that I started watching the sport because I was gaming the sport. Because I wanted to know who these people in this game are. Like, Alessandro Petacchi, never heard of him. When I was a 10-year-old, I go watch a sport and I see, oh, he's a sprinter. So I get to learn more about the sport. And by 2010, the Andy Schleck versus Contador days on the Tourmalet, I was starting to watch every single World Tour race. And then 2014, I was watching continental races additional to the World Tour race. And that's how I basically got obsessed with this sport, is how I see that. So a non-traditional way.
So thank you to Benji's mum, basically. You might still be trying to be a pro footballer like Remco was.
I ended up making YouTube videos about that cycling game because I was hardcore, when I was a kid, I was hardcore fan of like gaming YouTubers, whether it was Minecraft YouTubers or there was a game, Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth, hardcore fan. But I just got into cycling game YouTube and I made videos of that, made little stories about a pro team that would eventually win the Tour de France in my series, and people started watching that, and that brought me to a point where only like 20k people play that game. So, you know, if you've got 10k views, the ceiling is near.
Yeah.
So that was the problem I was getting in 2020. Like, I've got this cycling manager YouTube channel, and I'm like, okay, what now? Never going to be able to live off Pro Cycling Manager YouTube. I'm enjoying it, but I'm also going to get rid of my pleasure to play this game in like a year, because I've been playing this game for 12, 13 years in my life at this point. So I was getting annoyed at having to play the game to make the videos in the first place. But I had this feeling of, it's weird because like, maybe you have this feeling as well. Sometimes when you're a YouTuber, you're making content, But with specific content like that cycling game, I had played it so much, that stupid game. I had made so much content about that game to the point that I reached a feeling of, okay, I don't like it anymore. I don't want to make videos about this anymore. But I feel responsible for the people that have joined along this journey with me for the last 4 years of this YouTube channel, from 2016 until 2020, that I kind of feel like I have to make the content for those people. And I did that for another year in 2020 until I reached the point where I was like, okay, not having this anymore. I need to find something else, something that I like doing as well. And that's when I ended up talking to Patrick Bro, Lanteren Rouge, because I wanted to get past my cycling manager ceiling. He wanted to do something else as well, and podcast was something that was intriguing. So I say the next day we were already recording the GP Ploe podcasts. Hella underprepared. And we did that because the Tour de France was starting the week after in 2020, in the COVID year. So we did that as a test case, I would say, and it went well. Around 3,000 listeners on the first podcast, which came from our own individual channels, which also had following. That went good during a Tour de France. From 3,000, you go to like 6,000 to 7,000 to 20,000 to whatever it's now, roughly 100,000, I reckon, per episode. So significantly over the years, but it's also...
I didn't know any of that. I didn't know... I mean, I could have obviously researched it. I could have looked into your back catalogue of the Pro Cycling Manager videos, but I just wanted to ask you, as anyone else is going to ask you. So that was very interesting. So you mentioned about you felt like you had a responsibility almost to put these videos out to keep your fan base happy, and that fan base might have been actually half of the total users of the game. I think I'm not a massive gamer, but I used to really be into sort of driving sims. You get similar things in that kind of very niche kind of driving sim games, whether it's like Assetto Course or Richard Burns Rally. It's like those YouTubers that make those videos are almost like extended developers. And it's interesting, like you could have the situation where the developer might write to you and say, hey Benji, you're actually way more into this game than we are. And you're like taking you're taking that title and you're keeping it alive basically many years after it was an idea. So back then, were you riding a bike then, or no? Were you just doing the game?
I was trying to ride a bike, in my own fitness journey has been a pretty meh one in my early years, as in when I was playing football, I was fit. I was really fit as a kid until the age of 10, 11. And at the age of 13, something happened in my life, which is my dad went to the hospital, incorrectly diagnosed with lung cancer, which in the end was like, I don't know the exact things about it anymore, but I think it was giant abscess basically in his lungs. And because they thought it was lung cancer, they actually made it worse, which ended up with my dad in a coma for 2 months. And that's where my fitness fucked up. I was just off the rails. I started eating a lot more unhealthy because my mom was at the hospital bed, so I was eating like delivery food or quick food I could quickly manage to make in the evening, and my mom took care of me a lot. So to be clear, she's a wonderful mom, perfect mom. But it's just that period really put it off the rails, and I closed myself off instead of like taking it head on. I closed myself off into gaming, and that's something that on one end was really good because without gaming I might not be here. But on the other end, it also made me go into this pattern of unhealthy lifestyle where I didn't go out and ride my bike very much, that I didn't go out and sport anymore, that I stopped playing football, all that kind of stuff. And that's where I started gaining weight, and that's the period. I'm not like excusing myself because my dad got into the hospital kind of pity stuff, because first of all, my dad's okay now. So in the end, that is where that journey of weight gain started, to the point that in 2021, I reached a weight of 129 kilos. Jesus Christ. It's it's actually horrible. Because like, when you see
You're tall
me,
though, right? You're tall as well.
Yeah.
I think
I'm 1.92 m, but I've got computer posture, so I'm 189 when I try to stand up anymore because my back's fucked.
So we're about the same. We're about the same height. I've got maybe 1 or 2 centimeters above you, but that's. I mean, I don't consider myself as a lightweight, but that is that's a lot heavier than me. And now over the last 2 years,
I basically was able to lose around 20 kilos to 110 kilos, which I'm currently 110. I feel like I look slightly less than that, but I guess that's an advantage. But the weight's still there, and I'm working on it. And for example, in 2024, I want to lose weight again. So it's all part of the process. But
you know, the cycling analysis with Lanteren Rouge, and you got involved with Patrick. It's fair to say you've grown that to be the go-to for post-race analysis, not just on YouTube. So if I'm watching a race on Eurosport Player, or you know, GCN Plus, rest in peace, I will, as soon as the stage is finished, I turn it off, because I cannot be asked to watch a couple of clowns dancing around in a studio, just dancing. Like, I'm not paying to watch people dance. I want to see objective race analysis. I want to see numbers. I want to see tactics. So I turn it off. I wait a few hours, go have some food, and then I put on the LRCP, right? And I think you guys have ruffled a lot of feathers, because who are these young experts? You know, no offense to Patrick, just looks like some dorky, chubby kid in his bedroom. I know he's losing weight. Losing weight.
He's flying now.
He's flying now, allegedly. I've not seen the numbers, not seen the files. These young experts, qualified as essentially what are you qualified as? You're not cycling journalists, but you are wiping the floor with the analysis and just showing up the whole kind of journalist industry. You basically show that you don't need to have a race pass. You don't need to be hustling to shove a dictaphone in front of a rider and just asking dumbass questions. And the riders just, you can see behind the eyes, they're just like, they just want to die when they're just getting asked the same bullshit over and over again. Like, oh, was today's stage hard? And they're like, yeah, the legs felt hard. We'll go full gas tomorrow. It is what it is. And it's like, fuck, I can't watch it. How's the reception been from the professional journalism industry? Has it been threatening? Has it been inviting? Have you got job offers? I know Patrick was on GCN or Eurosport Plus for a few stages, maybe a couple of years ago, to do some analysis, and he didn't look comfortable, and it was quite uncomfortable to watch, because his level of intellect was too much for what they wanted, and it was just he wasn't there to do his thing. He was there because he was this new star, but it was like it clearly didn't fit in. And then going back to, you know, his own channel, his own podcast, it was like, that's the environment Patrick thrives in. So how's the reception been from the professional industry?
I think it's mixed. There's people that certainly support what we do, and there's people that are enthusiastic about what we do. There's also people that simply express that they're a bit jealous of the position that they're in. As in, I've had Dutch journalists tell me that, okay, I wish I was in, I knew as much about the social media and the online world of the sport as much as you, so I could also tap into that, stuff like that. Also, for example, an ex-cyclist that was wondering if I had any advice on whether he should become a commentator for Eurosport in some country or something. So there are people that like respect what we do in that sense, that they ask our opinion or are enthusiastic about it. But I also have a feeling that there's quite a bit of people that are looking negatively at us as kind of invaders, if that makes sense. And in addition, I'd also add that it's also, you've always got this feeling of like being unsure of when you meet someone, how they feel about you. That's the initial part. Let's say I go to an event. Let's say I went to Ruler Live at the end of 2023 in London, some like bike event thing. And every journalist and person that I meet there, I'm like, okay, does this person care about me? Is he just saying hi because he wants to be friendly so I don't roast him on the internet? An example of a very friendly person is Jess Cox, Eurosport commentator, GCN commentator now. He's really nice. He's like one of the nicest guys in the industry that I've met in person. So that's really nice. But there's also just people that always are unfriendly. I actually can't think of a name individually at the moment. Otherwise, I would actually throw it on the table. This kind of feeling towards the journalism world. And I feel that comes up more whenever let's say we do something wrong. Then it's always going to be the people that aren't necessarily listening to our content and more likely to be a journalist that call us out than the average viewer to call us out. And that's when you notice, okay, there's a clear negativity from that side. But also when it comes to riders, it's mixed when it comes to riders. I'd say that most riders are okay and respect what we do and are pretty hyped about it, especially young riders. Because, for example, young Belgian riders, I'm like really friendly when I'm on the road. Like last week I was in Denia, trying to get up Col de Rates, which for other people that's an easy climb. For me that's Alpe d'Huez.
I've got a challenge for you. You know, you're all about these weight loss targets, FTP targets. I've got a Col de Rates target for you, so we'll talk about that.
Okay. The rider side of it, we've got riders that are straight up negative towards us, and there's a shocking amount of responses from not the rider but their partner sometimes. And I do understand that, as in, if let's say my wife was a cyclist and someone starts roasting her on the internet, I would probably stand up for her even if I disagreed with what she did. So I understand why they do that, and I guess it's something that does happen quite a bit, but most of the time cyclists are okay with what we do and don't necessarily call us out.
Okay, let's move away from pro cycling scene just a little bit, talk about personal stuff. So you've moved to the UK relatively recently. Was that a move to further the cycling career, or what's that all about?
I actually think it might have reduced my chances in the cycling career. As in, the reason that I live in the UK now is because going back in time, the Giro of 2021, I don't know, Giro 2022, I reckon, the one that started in Budapest. I met my wife in Budapest for the first time, as in my then unknown person. I met her in a restaurant because Patrick had invited her, and we ended up having a click, and as a consequence we got together. She's from the UK, I'm from Belgium, and to be able to live together I have to move to the UK because she has a job that is in the UK. I've got a remote job that I can do from everywhere. So that was the idea behind it. Sounds pretty okay. Has it reduced my career in the sport? I think it's made it maybe a little bit harder, but I think the trade-off is very worth it for me, as in I prefer living with my wife. And I think she'd rather hear that too. First of all, Belgium. Moving away from Belgium, a space where I was starting to get opportunities from the media. As in, every now and then I would get Sportza, for example, on a phone call. Could you give a take on this? Or Het Nieuwsblad, which is one of the main newspapers in Belgium, where they were like, okay, we're organizing this live viewing experience where two experts of the sport watch the race and give their takes live, and then we post those takes on the timeline on the website. So I did that in 2023, for example. But those opportunities are easier when I'm in Belgium, because it's hard for me to go to the studio every time there's a classic if I live in the UK. I don't feel like I'm going to get that opportunity in the UK much because, one, let's be honest about it, GCN sees us as a competitor, so I don't think I'll get any opportunities through GCN in that way. I never had any offers from GCN except one joking invite to become a web developer when I quit my web developer job.
Personally speaking, I mean, I moved back to the UK a year and a half ago from Asia, and big change since I left the UK. It's kind of like we're stuck in the dark ages a little bit, but positively speaking, do you feel that your personal brand, so your Benji Naesen brand of like your cycling progression, your fitness videos, I think you've got big opportunities in the UK for that, for like attaining sponsorship or getting brand partners. I don't know what it's like to live in Belgium, but I can imagine it's a bit more open and free thinking to give you sponsorship and give you like a path to follow on that side of things. Do you feel like that's a gain from moving over?
I think it's a break even if I think about it.
Okay.
Because on one end I would tend to agree, but on the other hand there's many cycling YouTubers in the UK, so it's a space where others are promoting brands already, and then those brands might not get another YouTuber on board. So that's one thing. But in Belgium it's also, for example, I am currently actively looking for more sponsorships on my YouTube. As in, I've got 2 or 3 partners, Sirocco for cycling kit, some other, every now and then I make a video with Zwift, etc., etc. I want to make sure that it's a financially viable thing, that I keep putting money in this channel, because I spend money to go for a week on a training camp for cycling for a video, for example, to Spain. I want to try and hopefully make that money back in those videos. And right now I'm at a point where I am making that money back, but I also want to see if I can earn something on it. So let's say about 50% of my content in 2024 currently has secured sponsorships. But I'd like to have 100% secured sponsorships.
I mean, compare it to my channel. I have 0 sponsors. Never had a single sponsor. I've had affiliate deals with brands, cameras and nutrition. But with me, I have to keep it so objective because mine's all about technical analysis of kit. I really can't take on a kit sponsor or a bike sponsor or a wheel sponsor. So that I've not gone after sponsors per se because my sort of day job is engineering. So like I still have that as my main kind of revenue income. But I think with you, it's an open book. Like everyone should be jumping on board. But if I had one piece of advice, I probably wouldn't go after a bike sponsor because buy what you want to ride.
One thing I am trying right now is like when I threw the media kit out, it was one to secure more sponsorships and one to secure a bike sponsor, which is opposite to what you're saying right now. But I'm also on the page of like, one, it needs to be good enough that I have bikes both in Belgium and the UK. And sometimes like Specialized told me, I think in 2023, came to me and said, okay, we can give you a bike for a year. But I'm like, that's not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a bike plus financial motivation to ride it in the first place.
And these yearly contracts they're so easily seen through. If you look at influencers on Instagram, it's like they're gushing over Pinarello one year, and then suddenly, the next year it's like, oh, this is the best bike, and it's just so lame, man. It's like I only want to promote something I truly stand for, as in like I promote Zwift that I inherently have been riding since I started riding my bike, which for me has been a huge part because my hours, let's say before I went full-time into cycling, so before 2020, oh God, when did I go full? I think the 1st of January I went full-time of 2022. So the year of 2021, when I was at my highest weight, 129 kilos, that period, I started riding on Zwift. Because I was also having health issues as a consequence of being overweight, as in like acid reflux and so forth. I was not good. I was doing an 8-hour job during the day, web development. I was doing 4-5 hours of podcast plus my content per day. So I was doing 13-hour days, 14-hour days, and I had no life. Like I won't lie, but I had no social life anymore. And it came to the point that when I was riding my bike on Zwift was 11:30 in the evening, midnight. 12:30 at night, just because I wanted to get some cycling in every day. And in 2022, that's kind of what I did. I tried to get a half an hour in every day to get some cycling in, and that's how I combined with eating a bit healthier, trying to meal prep some food. I actually lost weight. But back to the thing we were talking about, sponsorships. It's like I agree that I don't want to pick up any bike brand I don't want to actually work with. And that's why I'm hoping that the brands that do reach out are ones that I already want to ride. So that's kind of the hope here in that scenario. Because you never know if they will reach out or not. But it's also, if I can secure other sponsorships, then I might be able to be more fine with buying another bike. But it's also, is it weird to say that in a position that I am, where I'm still 110 kgs, when it comes to the progress I've made on the bike, I've gone from a terrible FTP doesn't mean everything, but for me it was a good general indicator of if I got better over time, is how I perceived it. I don't see it necessarily as that's my 1 hour power. I see it more as that's where I was a year ago and that's where I am now roughly. 190 FTP, and like of my weight, that's horrible. At the start of 2023, even that's after a year of losing weight, that was my FTP at the start of January 2023. And now I'm like 25-30% better, I reckon, at the end of the year, which I think is healthy progress. I'm at a point in my fitness journey where I don't feel like I need to have an expensive bike. I just need to have a bike. I just need to ride my bike. It's easy for me to say because I love you guys for who you are, but I think there is a risk that if you take on a load of channel sponsors, it could... from a personal, like, selfish point of view, I don't want it to change your way of producing videos. I don't want it to affect the cycling analysis side of it. I don't want you to turn into a generic influencer because we have, like you said, that it's just saturated.
One, my aim with like getting sponsors is that it doesn't necessarily change the content because I don't depend on the income from that channel. It's more that I want to monetize the content that I already make by hopefully finding sponsors that align with it perfectly to the point that it doesn't necessarily ruin the viewing experience. That's my goal. And whenever someone really, I had one sponsor on a Pro Cycling Manager video 2 years ago, where it was completely different. It was like a football game or something. But I was like, let's see if I can earn some money with a Pro Cycling Manager video. And someone said, this doesn't really fit your content. And I never got a sponsor like that again because I felt like I agreed with that feedback. It's like when you get feedback from the audience, there's one, haters that I don't listen to. I just ignore it at this point. There's two, people that are giving positive feedback. I listen to those. And three, it's constructive feedback that I try to take on. Because if you don't try to take that on, you're also not going to get your content better. But back to your point of female versus male, I think that's part of the industry in itself, to the point that if you look at the other side, if you look at analysis, for example, do you see many female and sports analysis, cycling analysts? It's like, I know there's on Twitter quite a few where I was like, okay, there might be something in there where I would listen to that person if they did it, but I also feel like they get less opportunities on that side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. I think there could be far more in the analysis and broadcasting side. Yeah. There could be far more. So, but if you look on Instagram or YouTube as like vlogging influencers or kind of the cycling lifestyle influencers, if there are that many women who are able to be sponsored, why aren't they not in the broadcast side? Why are they not on the analysis side? It can't be a coincidence. And I'm sick of the bike industry and the bike companies saying it's for equality reasons. It's essentially the dirtiest, oldest marketing trick in the book, which is sex sells. And it's a fact. Sex does sell. But stop saying it's for equality reasons, because it's not. The balance is out.
On one end, I agree. But on the other end, I also feel like the reason that those people... that there's not as many women in the broadcasting sphere is because I feel they get criticized way more than I do. Like Jose Bennett's commentator of GCN, and also in the Netherlands, she was actually like severely criticized because most of the comments were literally, she's got such an annoying female voice. Like, sorry, but annoying voice, I'm okay with. But if you say annoying female voice, then you're self-reporting yourself.
That's weird. Yeah. But then you look at like the linchpin of the Eurosport team, which is Orla. It would be nothing without her. Like, she leads those guys. She puts them in their place when they're wrong. She's solid. She is like the anchor of that show. Yeah. It's just a shame we don't have more Orlas in the world. But if we had a studio full of Orlas, I don't think anyone would complain, because the other guys, I don't know. Like,
and she still gets criticized all the time. What are you wearing? Yeah. Why are you wearing a short skirt? Like, let her wear whatever she wants.
But she's trolling them. Like, she's good enough to do what she likes. She doesn't care. Like, exactly. I think it's amazing. But I think the other guests on that show are sometimes just dead weight. Like, they don't need to be there. They need Orla, and then they need you and Patrick. That's my opinion.
Can they afford us, though? That's a question.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think from my point of view, this is because basically I can't get sponsored for what I do on my channel, because I'm not very safe for like a frame or a wheel sponsor. But my recommendation to you, from a selfish point of view, would be to monetize the offline part. So, like, get into consulting, get into like media or marketing or broadcast consulting, and monetize that. And then the vlog stuff, just do whatever you like, and just keep it completely clean. I know it's practically very, very difficult, and yes, you need to cover your costs of going to Calpay or going to Eurobike or whatever. But from my YouTube channel was brought me is like more consulting in the background, rather than actually just plastering the first 20 seconds with companies.
If I look at your channel, for example, let me lay down the foundations first. One, I already felt like an imposter going into this podcast. I won't lie, as in, like, you're a very equipment-focused channel. And because of the way that I got into the sport, not necessarily by riding a bike, I have less of a basics when it comes to equipment, to the point that I'm still learning every side of it. Like, if you ask me every part of my bike right now, I don't even know every part of my bike. Like, I don't really care. It rides. It gets me from point A to point B in my ride, and I'm happy with that. I just know that I have too little gears to go up the hills that I want to go up. And I think it's an 1132. because I could just Googled it. So that's the position I'm in compared to you. But when it comes to consultancy, are you talking consultancy for brands, or do you also see that as an opportunity for consultancy for actual teams?
From my point of view, it's not been with any teams. Although, well, I've done a bit of engineering kind of testing and consulting for one team in particular. But largely it's been for companies. And sometimes companies that aren't even in the bike industry. They just like what I say in one video, or they like the analysis I did in one video, and you say, hey, there's a guy that clearly gets engineering. He can also disseminate it to, laymen versus technical people. And it has brought about, offline monetization, let me say. My threshold is there a conflict of interest with what I review? Yeah. If it's a no, then I'm happy to do it. Like a company that I worked with quite closely last year is a nutrition brand called Veloforte, and it genuinely is the tastiest. I'm not working with them at the moment, but it's genuinely the tastiest stuff I've ever tried. There's no conflict of interest because I don't review other nutrition. My channel's not about nutrition or diet or sports science. So 100%. I'll take some affiliate commission and it wasn't sponsorship, it was affiliate commission, but 100% I'll do that. Other things like cameras or maybe even clothing. If a company says, look, we're having real trouble testing this, or we want to develop this, we know you've worked on gearboxes or torque rigs or something, can you work for us for a bit? I'm happy to do that. But I try on my channel not to put the sponsors on, try and keep sponsors away from it, because I think however much you say it won't change your content, it does, because you have to make it safe. You have to constantly think, am I satisfying all of these media managers?
Maybe this is a very selfish way of looking at it compared to my sponsors, but I perceive it as in, if you're not okay with me doing the content the way I do it now, then I don't want you to be a sponsor in the future anyway. That makes sense? It's also the kind of thing where I've got friends in the peloton, whether it's cyclists, stuff like that. If I look into that relationship with those riders, they're friends of mine, but I'm not going to be more friendly to them on the podcast just because they're friends of mine. And if they respect me and what I do, then they're okay with that, because I respect their opinion towards what I do. If they disagree with me, they can openly say that too. And I feel like when it comes to brands, I kind of feel like I'm in the same position where, let's say I have a kid brand, and they're like, oh, could you be a bit more friendly towards that? Or could you do something on that side? I'm like, we signed this proposition on the basis that I can do whatever the fuck I want. And if you disagree with that, then I also feel like that's the end of our partnership. Like, for example, in 2022, I worked with Jumbo-Visma on tactical analysis while doing LRCP. Yep. But if they respect what I do, which they did, then they have no input on what I say on the podcast. And to the point that I was called a Wout van Aert hater during the Tour de France. But I'm considering, on the record, because I'm on a podcast, so I'm going to say it anyway, I'm considering taking on a similar smaller activity, as in race analysis for a few races in 2024 for a team. Yeah. And I'm currently figuring out if I want to do it, if I will enjoy doing it, and whether it's worth the time that because sometimes, is it weird that, this is going to sound really weird, but working for Jumbo-Visma in 2022, it's a cool freelance work, it's a cool opportunity. Every opportunity comes with an opportunity costs, because that could be time that I'm spending making content, to the point that the Jumbo-Visma thing was such a notable package of things. I felt like at the end of it felt more like an opportunity cost than an opportunity for me. Is that harsh? Because a lot of people would jump for it.
Word of mouth over time, the news spreads, oh, Benji did this, Benji did that for Jumbo. It's on your CV. There is a legacy effect to that. And I think, the way of working is changing, right? Being self-employed or being an influencer, whatever. But there's one thing I think holds true, is that you still need some sort of CV. You can't just have everything at once. You need to put the work in, and maybe no one heard about it at the time, or maybe no one really valued it at the time, or it didn't really get you much exposure, but it will in time. I took annual leave last year to go to bloody Eurobike.
Yeah.
The fucking hotels was so expensive because everyone's going.
Why is it always during the tour?
I don't know, but yeah. I don't know. It's just when they got the event hall in Germany, but everyone's going like, why would you pay out of your own pocket to go there? At expensive, crappy hotel. A couple of days travel, a flight. Yeah, it wasn't cheap. It was everything included, probably about 800 quid round trip, and that was doing it on the cheap. You've got to invest in the early days. You've got to get it's like you can't replace face-to-face meetings. You can email all the marketing departments from all the companies you like, but actually going there, giving them a business card, having a chat is like the legacy effect, and they remember you. And just by going there and meeting brands like that, I got loads of work from that. Yes, and some of that work, like you were saying, I feel like is more of an opportunity cost, and it has been an opportunity. It hasn't paid for the trip, but in time, that I think it will, because people talk about you, your name gets around a bit more, and I think, if you think it doesn't make money at the time or it's not worth the hours of the day, I guarantee it probably is. You just need to let it play out a little bit longer. That would be my advice, but what do I know? Yeah.
You go to Eurobike. Do you feel like the people that are there, the brand's marketing people and so forth, had a clue who you were before you spoke to them?
Only a couple of brands. Most people I could snake in and around completely incognito. No one knew who I was.
I've got a feeling that no one knows who we are whenever I go to a bike or equipment event. It's weird because like in the pro cycling sphere, that's different. As in, if I go to a race, then most riders know me, most staff know me. And when it comes to the public, every now and then someone asks like, oh, can I get a picture or something, whatever. But if I go to like an equipment event or even at Ruler Live, for example, most brand people, I don't think had a clue who we were. And that makes it, in my head, also harder for us to get those equipment sponsors on the podcast, for example. Is it because the people that are necessarily at those events, the marketing people of those equipment brands, aren't necessarily as invested in the pro cycling scene?
I mean, I think in a lot of companies there is a crossover, like the road marketing from Orbea, like they will be invested in the technical side, like who's doing the technical reviews, whether it's Tour Magazine, and they will also have a very close relationship with the pro cycling team. But I think in some brands there's a massive disconnect, and at least in your situation, you've got, you said when you go to the races, you are recognised. But when I went to, if I went to a race, no one would know who I am. And then when I went to Eurobike and I was talking to technical people or marketing people, no one knew who I am either. So it's like I'm incognito for everything, and that has its benefits because I can creep around and look at stuff and be critical and film it, and no one's going to go, oh hey, they just think I'm a random, which is good. Without sounding big-headed, I've got 50 or 60,000 subs on YouTube. Don't forget to like.
Yeah, you're doing pretty well for yourself.
Benji can do his little heart symbol. Go on, Benji.
I'm trying.
Oh, it's not working.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah. So some brands, they were saying, okay, what do you do then? I was like, oh, well, I do like completely independent product testing on YouTube, whether it be aerodynamics of wheels or whatever. And if I was in a marketing department, I would want to know who I was. I think you should know who every relatively big YouTuber reviewer is.
I agree.
It has a big impact in the market, and it was almost, they're watching the guys like me and Hambini. They know kind of the counter argument to the kind of paid ad bullshit on GCN.
Yeah,
they should have like at least one eye on that. And if I spoke to someone who, from even a small company, who kind of was like, oh no, we don't really keep up with YouTube reviewers, I was like, red flag. How can you, in this day and age, how can you not know who a YouTube reviewer is? Because no one's buying printed mags anymore. The kind of paid advertorial on online publishing is, I don't know whether it's like Bike Radar or Cycling Weekly. It's who's really paying for that shit? Like, it's all on YouTube.
I think a brand is more likely to throw 80K at a traditional media business to promote their business in a brand new podcast that they create in that traditional media that might not have a proven following, than throw it at us, for example. And that to me shows that there's something in these brand equipment companies that they don't realize traditional media doesn't necessarily sell products. As in, I've never bought a product because I've seen it on a newspaper or on a newspaper podcast or something like that along the lines. I buy my products when I see a YouTuber use it.
Well, at some point, we're not going to be the. I mean, I'm getting there already. We're not going to be the young ones in cycling, and then the young ones in cycling will be buying stuff they see on TikTok, and I don't have TikTok. I'm just not going there. So at some point, YouTube and Instagram
I've got a TikTok, but
will probably be the old thing. The old guys do.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we're in that era now, but it's not always going to be like that, probably. All right, moving on from sponsorship and monetization and consulting, whatever. This is something that's spoken about every year. You and Patrick are obviously very clued up on this. What's your take on the revenue model or the rights model of cycling broadcasting? I always kind of joke, you must be absolutely mad, or you're washing money to want to sponsor a pro team, apart from the marketing of the bike companies. I think that's probably quite beneficial. What's the model going forward? Because every year we hear the same thing. Oh, like cycling's dying. GCN Plus is dead. We're not going to be able to watch the cycling in many territories around the world. It's impossible to watch pro races apart from maybe the Tour.
Yeah.
How do we get around this, and how do we encourage fan engagement? Because in the last podcast I was speaking to Dan Bigham, and obviously being a very technical podcast, we spent a lot of time talking about fan engagement and comparing it to F1, which is essentially you're taking very fucking boring racing, but you're keeping fans engaged with amazing data. And it has, cycling. If you're watching a flat stage in the Tour, fucking boring. But if we had the fan engagement that F1 has, maybe we can make it work. Maybe we can make it pay. Do you have any quick thoughts, without lingering on this too much, how we can fix the broadcasting and the revenue and the rights model?
Number one, the sport is so bloody decentralized. Like, every organizer is different. Every organizer has a different media rights company that sells their rights, and then if you go to that company, you might be able to get the rights, but if you go to the other one, you might not be able to get the rights, and every one of those companies does it differently, to the point that you got to go and find 70 websites to watch every single race at this point. So I think Patrick has a good idea of like the ideal scenario, which everybody keeps talking about at One Cycling, but I feel like cycling's too decentralized for these teams to come together and actually pull it off. And also, I feel like it needs to be someone that is not necessarily in the teams yet, but someone that is third party that sets this all up. Some kind of broadcasting at default built by the governing body of the sport itself, like you have in F1, like you have in all these other sports as well. So that's one part of the thing, but to not regurgitate too much of what Patrick's take is on this, I also feel like it's not necessarily dying in its current form. It's stuck in this endless loop. Teams dying because they lose their sponsor. New team comes up because there's a passionate person about cycling that is owning a company that throws his money at it. And that cycle keeps going. And the points that might become dangerous is if the money necessary to sponsor a team becomes too much, to the point that it's kind of a bubble that pops, and then money goes down a bit in the sport. And that's the danger I see on the road. As in, what if, because top teams are paying top riders more and more, to the point that they're forcing smaller teams to earn more and more when it comes to sponsorships. And that cycle might keep growing and growing, to the point that it will be harder to find sponsors at the lower teams in the sport, and then you'll have a bit of an issue in that way. How to fix it? I think it's fucked.
It's going to get to such a level of fuckedness that it's going to sort of like nationalise. So one eye opener for me was like talking to Dylan Johnson about this thing called the Lifetime Grand Prix in America.
No clue what it is.
That you don't know what it is, neither did I. So that seems to be extremely self-supporting, well-funded. The riders get paid a shit ton. It's on gravel, or it's mountain biking, so it's not even the road category. But that seems to be a very sustainable, well-oiled business, essentially, that's like quite well liked by the riders. It's loved by the fans. And because it's not decentralized and split across the world, it's a very well self-contained kind of model. And whether other countries could support that, whether we could support that in the UK with a kind of road scene, I just don't think we could, because we've tried and failed so many times. But there's something about that lifetime Grand Prix which seems to work. It's a model which is laughing in the face of, I think, road cycling in other countries or gravel cycling in other countries. So
I also feel like in this sport, there's so many people that are coming together to do things that are just so bloody useless. As in, you've got multiple teams that came together to create this concept called Velon, which was a concept that was initially made to try and make sure that teams, was an initiative by the teams, to make sure that the teams start earning more from the sport itself. So, for example, part of the money that comes from the broadcasting and so forth, so stuff like that. Well, that didn't work. Velon's dead. They started organizing their own events outside of the UCI called the Hammer Series, which was enjoyable to watch every now and then, but it's dead. Then they created this thing called Road Code, which is an app that you can get on your phone that most people have never heard of because they didn't market it. And it's basically an app where teams post exclusive content outside of the stuff they already post on their social media. I've never even bothered opening it because they marketed it as a new app built on Web3 blockchain technology. And when I heard that the use of the buzzwords, I was like, this is bullshit. That app's useless. And we're in this cycle of just people in this sport just making useless apps because they don't understand the sport they are working with.
My second take, and the one I like the most, is that I like it that cycling is hard to pin down. It can't be bottled up and sold in containers like football or boxing or NFL or something. The very essence of cycling is escapism. That's why we do it. Chasing horizons. You get moments of like drama, and then you get long periods of boredom. You got a million miles of headroom. That is you can't bottle that. And that is proof that cycling is very much alive. And that's how it should be. So I think it's beautiful that it can't be monetized or TV rights don't work. That's how it should be.
Is it ironic that teams that are complaining, which in some space they have the right to complain, but are also complaining about, we're not like a sport like Formula One, whatever, also are just dog shit at social media?
I think, from my point of view, the social media and hype and marketing in cycling is overweight, actually. I think there's too much bullshit for actually what occurs. If you look at, stage racing or road racing, and then you look at all the marketing surrounding that, all the influence, it's too much. It's like, we forget that actually, talking about the revenue model or the rights model for cycling, on TV, we're talking about racing here. All the other faff and paraphernalia around the marketing is like a fancy kit or coffee rides. It's like, it's kind of sick. It's a bit sickly, and I think it goes to show how little money the racing actually makes because of all the other shit we have to watch on the side. I used to love watching racing. I would follow every single race. I would fly to watch the Vuelta, or I'd try and see stages of the Tour when I was younger. Because we consume so much cycling content. I mean, the irony, we're doing a fucking podcast. We just eroded my argument. We consume so much cycling content outside of cycling racing that when cycling racing does come about, I kind of lost interest. I didn't watch any of the Tour Down Under. I heard bits and bobs that sounded a bit boring. And it is boring. A lot of cycling racing is boring. Trying to explain, minor tactical nuances to new fans there's a fine line between just boredom, mansplaining, and just not being relevant to what people ride bikes for. So it's a very weird sport. For some people, it's not sport. For me, it's not sport anymore. I just do it for escapism. Yeah, another irony thing is that why am I talking about technology so much and marginal gains? But hey, that's the niche.
In 1996, the UCI signed the Lugano Charter, which is a document that states that the developments and innovations in the sport should not take away from the fact that the sport should inherently stay human, to the point that I think that Lugano Charter is actively stopping the sport from using more data in the sport.
Dan Bigham and I spoke about this when we were comparing against F1, and we actually said that, you know, one thing that would help the fan engagement is upping the weight limit on all the bikes. So increasing it from 6.8 to 8 or 9, and then equipping all the bikes with the same kind of telemetry, you know, when they're on the brakes, what power they're doing, what's the heart rate. Because if you're watching the Tour on Eurosport or Sports or whatever, we get these crappy graphics of like rider power, but the camera's not even looking at that rider. You don't know if that rider's in the wheels and coasting or they're, you know, on the climb. And it's like, okay, you've got 400 watts on the screen, but it means nothing. It's like there's no, that rider's not even in the shot, or their heart rate, like it's laggy, it's not accurate. Like so we're trying to get there. I guess a lot of the pushback is because, we don't want to run a camera on our bike because it's going to make it less aero or too heavy.
I think that's why they're kind of stopping the idea of glucose and so forth meters on the bike and lactate meters live, that kind of stuff, which I'm pretty sure that if you're a viewer, you probably don't want to see the lactate meter on the TV, but
it could be disseminated in a friendly way. So you're not going to get like millimoles of lactate. You get some other metric that they've developed, which is understandable from Joe Blogs.
During the Giro broadcast, I'm pretty sure that the broadcast was being sponsored by Whoop, and EF was being sponsored by Whoop, and as a consequence on TV we could see every piece of data about Hugh Carthy. And the thing is,
you get to the third week of the Giro, you don't need a Whoop score. Everyone is just fucked. Like, you just put fucked. Not enough
recovery
sleep,
zero.
Probably got COVID. Fun fact, I actually nearly ran over Hugh Carthy the other day. It was Boxing Day in the UK. And don't ask me why. I was going out in the car and I was going up a very narrow lane near where I live in Cumbria. And it's like one of those moments where you sort of like someone else's life flashes before your eyes. So there's not enough space for a car and a bike. And it was up towards a farm. And all of a sudden this big pink helmet, actually like a pink helmet, not part of his genitals, was flying around the corner, and I nearly had a head-on with Hugh Carthy, and I was like, fuck, I nearly killed a cyclist, and then it dawned on me that it was Hugh Carthy. So there we go. If you're watching, Hugh Carthy, I nearly killed you.
Do you feel any guilt about the driving situation?
No, I mean, it was one of those things where if it was a member of, I don't know what we were talking about for this, but it was one of those things. Had it been a member of the public who wasn't like good bike handler, they probably would have hit the bonnet of the car because there wasn't enough space for the car and the bike. But you know, he actually like let off the brakes and just like got down a gap between the hedgerow and my car by about that much and just carried on. Didn't even phase him. He was just gone.
How do you perceive the driver culture here? Because I swear that if I look at my cycling myself, my personal cycling for a second, riding in Belgium is easy. I just ride on a big road for a kilometer to the point that I arrive at the big road probably has a separate cycle path. We arrive at some canal where I can ride on a cycling only part of a road for 20 kilometers straight. I go to Andorra, driving culture amazing. Cars go out of the way an entire road width to make you feel safe. In the Denia region in Spain, it's a combination of that and some tourists that are a bit less careful around cyclists.
Some British expats who probably could murder you.
In the UK, I'm bloody terrified. If I go out on my bike, I need to ride on the opposite side of the road, so that probably helps a bit mentally with trying to make me a bit more scared. Inherently more dangerous because there's very limited cycle paths in my area, at least around the Guildford area, roughly. And then I look at driver culture and the amount of close passes I have in the UK. Usually white vans, by the way. Always the white vans. It's just
Amazon Prime.
Inherently a more dangerous country to cycle in my opinion.
Obviously, we can't paint everything with the same brush, but I think from my experience, I used to live not far from Surrey. I used to live in Twickenham in London. Ride out to Surrey all the time. It is one of the worst places in the UK. I think you're unlucky. places like that, suburbs of London, are extremely dangerous. It tends to be like very, impatient commuter traffic. Where I am,
they care
to be honest,
more about.
To be honest, I think the north of the UK is better in general anyway.
Okay.
People are a lot more patient. It's generally there's less dense traffic, so you don't have that level of rush. The roads are the same, or if not worse, probably more potholes. But I will never complain about car culture or cycling conditions in the UK because I've lived in Asia, and that is horrific. Like where I was living for 7 years in Hong Kong. In Europe you go for a ride to chill, right? In Hong Kong or Asia, you need to be chilled before you go. Otherwise, your day is ruined. It's you'll just come back steaming with rage. It's so bad. It's almost like if you're on a bike, it's almost like you're not rich enough to own the road. Therefore, we're just going to run you off the road. I've, touch wood, never had a collision with a car in my cycling career in the UK, and I've been cycling since I was like 10. In Hong Kong, I had 3 or 4 instances where I was hit with a wing mirror of a bus or a taxi, like getting too close, just like clipping the handlebars and then taking me out. And then there's a culture there of like, oh fuck, there's insurance to deal with. I'm just going to get back in the car and go. So that's bad. So UK, I wouldn't complain ever, but I do think you're unlucky in Surrey because it is. It is pretty bad, which is a shame because there's a massive cycling culture in Surrey. Like if you took everyone who rode a bike in the UK, like per square kilometre, there's shitloads of road cyclists there.
I feel like it's actively hindering my amount of endurance rides I do, because
for sure,
as a consequence, I tend to choose Zwift over going outside quite a few times, and I can't ride 2 hours or 3 hours on Zwift without being bored. My Zwift rides are doing Zwift races or doing a 1 hour, maybe 1 hour and a half if I'm really generous that day of an endurance ride. And I know that indoor riding, if I do an hour and a half, it's more than if I would do an hour and a half outdoors. At least everybody keeps telling me that. But I just feel like it's reducing the amount of endurance riding I do. And if I would live in Spain, if I spend a week in Spain, I do 3 hours a day. So it's such a major difference.
3 hours a day and not feel stressed or beat up or anything. Well, Hugh Carthy doesn't on Boxing Day. He wants to be killed by a car. So, was in Mallorca last week, and I'll be honest, I haven't loved road cycling for probably about 10 years. It's been something I've done because of the YouTube channel. First and foremost, I'm a mountain biker. I used to be a downhiller when I was a kid. I used to race downhill, and then I just got into road cycling after university to keep fit. But I haven't loved it since I was younger, and I used to go to training camps in Calpe and stuff. That was when I really liked it. And since living in busier countries, it's been more of a thing to keep fit rather than love it. And I think I actually found my love for road cycling last week because I was riding 3 or 4 hours a day without worries, without having your ass smashed by potholes, and just getting into the rhythm again. But maybe one day when we return to the EU, I'll be able to move to Europe and enjoy my retirement in Spain. So talking a little bit about your fitness journey then, if we can continue that. You said you were at one point 129 kilos and you're down to 110. How is the weight loss going? And do you feel like, from my point of view, when I started to get fit when I was younger, I like you, I was pretty chunky. I think my heaviest was about 110 because I used to play rugby and it didn't really matter, and they just liked us being bigger, which was a bit weird. They used to encourage us to eat. When I started to lose weight and get a bit fitter, I found the progression very, very fast. Like it was almost not exponential, but there was a very steep part of that curve. Do you think you're on that steep part of the curve now, or are you starting to sort of level off and finding it harder to find gains or lose weight?
In the year of 2022, I lost basically 20 kilos. And during that year, I didn't necessarily... I got better on the bike to the point that I was shit at riding a bike, and after half an hour I was dead, to I could actually ride an hour and a half without feeling like I just took on a full train with my bare hands. Like, that's the difference in 2022. So I have no stats when it comes to my watts in 2022. In 2023, I started the videos because I'll be honest, I wasn't confident enough to do what I do on the channel in 2022. Like this show what I was going through, that process. I wasn't confident to do that in 2022 to the point that I reached the point where I had lost those 20 kilos at 2023 to start. And I said to myself, okay, I lost that weight. I know how to do it now. I understand. I've got confidence in this, that I know that my process is working. And I feel better about myself to be on video. I have more confidence. The self-confidence growth of me in the last 4 years has been significant. One with the podcast, to the point that the first year of the podcast, we didn't have video, only audio. The second year, we added video, and I didn't sleep for 2 days before the first time we used video because I was so terrified of what people would think of me. Crazy, right? Like, right now, I don't give a shit.
So that's good.
That's difference across those years in self-confidence growth is absolutely insane, and YouTube has been a big part of that for me. I switched from I want to lose as much weight as possible to I want to become a better cyclist in 2023, where I really wanted to focus on getting better on the bike and actually getting more watts and so forth in. I think because I made that switch, I got better on the bike, but I started to look at my nutrition less in 2023, to the point that I got 30% better. We're talking from, again, FTP not ideal, but started at 190 FTP in January, and by the end of the year I had, I think, 225 roughly. So I was happy with that growth, but the weight had stayed the same. Now my view for 2024 is I've been counting my calories actually, and in addition to that, I've been riding my bike more than last year. So inevitably my view on 2024 is if I keep this up, because my goal is to do roughly 100K per week, which for me that's a 4 or 5 hour ride, like per week, 4 or 5 hours of riding per week. Be so busy during the Tour de France that I need to tune it down to 3 hours or something during that week. But it's all situational. But the overall view is roughly on average 100K per week, and then I'm already doing double of what I did last year. And then I will not only on paper get better watts-wise, absolute watts, but my watt per kilo will go exponentially because the kilos will go down. So for me, data is super important because it keeps me motivated. And that's kind of how the process has been so far. So first year was weight. Second year was watts got better. Third year, I want to do both and combine it in like a watt per kilo special. So that's kind of the vibe I've got going on. And so far it's working, but maybe you can, as a content creator yourself, not necessarily in the same space, but I sometimes feel like whenever I make videos, quite often it needs to be a video that has an interesting aspect to it. That could either be the title or the thumbnail. If I upload a video every week that is, my Z2 ride of the week, who the fuck cares? Like, nobody's going to watch me do a Z2 ride every week. So I need to find things that are interesting. So I can't do the maybe more ideal 80% endurance riding and 20% flashy things. For me, it's more a balance of 50% endurance riding and 50% trying to do flashy things, which for me is still a good balance because, let's be honest about it, I will lose weight and get better regardless of what zone I ride in, as long as I just do the hours on the bike. But I quite often get comments of like, oh, you shouldn't be doing Zwift races, you should be doing Z2 rides all the time or something. And I'm like, I won't have a video if I don't do anything. Like, if I just ride my bike endurance ride, you're not watching anything on this channel anymore. So the content is slightly impacting the amount of progress I can make. But I think I've got a good balance of trying to do 50-50 endurance and flashy video things.
I mean, when you say flashy video things, I don't think they should be smashing yourself doing intervals or FTP tests, because 50-50, like high intensity and low intensity, is probably way off the ratio which you should be going. I mean, I'm no expert on training, but I think that's too high. That's too much intensity stuff. Unless your volume, your weekly volume is very, very low. So let's say you're training like 2 or 3 hours a week. Do that all at high intensity. That could be maybe your thing, is that you skip all the zone 2 and you just do 2 hours a week and kill yourself. And I think there are studies to show that that's pretty successful in the short term. Obviously you're going to hit a ceiling pretty quick. I think we get into, people have on Strava or something, they get stuck into a yearly kilometers achieved target. And I mean, for me, last year, I think I did one of my lowest yearly kilometres in 6 or 7 years. And actually, I'd taken a step back from doing so much work. I'd moved somewhere where cycling was pretty easy. You know, cycling in Hong Kong was extremely difficult. You basically had to finish a ride by 6:30 a.m. or forget it, too much traffic and too many crazy drivers. And I actually did less kilometres last year, living somewhere where I could cycle every day. The hours on the bike were through the roof because I was training a lot on the gravel bike or on the mountain bike. I was doing a lot of product testing on the mountain bike side. My hours were up there, like one of the highest hours I'd ever done. So don't get stuck into the kilometres achieved, look at the hours. And then this is where I really think Zwift training and riding outside is not really well comparable, because you mentioned, you know, like the whole interstellar meme of like 1 hour on the trainer is worth 10 hours on Earth. There's also, you know, you've seen the meme, you know, like the time dilation thing. I think there is something in that, because the way the turbo trainer works is that you are always pedaling, whether you're going downhill, you know, in a race or even a fast group ride on, in a race or cornering, or even a fast kind of group ride on Zwift. If you stop pedaling on the downhill, you're getting dropped. In reality, when we are riding outside, everyone's coasting the downhill if it's beyond like 3%, because you don't want to die. So you're always pedaling. There's like tend to have like greater leg speed on the indoor trainer. If you look at the number of revolutions per hour on the indoor trainer versus outdoors, it's almost double, I would say. And I think we as like sports science, you know, sports sciences or cycling performance is missing a metric, and I would call it. I've literally just thought of this as we're chatting. I would call it normalized cadence, or like normalized revolutions. So, you know, like normalized power is essentially the power that you're doing when you are pedaling. And it doesn't take into effect the coasting. So normalized power is a better way of analyzing your power for a session if it's hilly or lumpy or there's a lot of traffic or stop start. But when we're looking at Zwift, you can jump off Zwift and you look at your TSS and or your kind of Strava intensity score, or whatever it's called on Strava, and it looks quite low, but fuck me, you might be really feeling it way more than an hour outside. And it's because for the whole hour you've been pedaling. And I think we need to put more emphasis on that an hour on Zwift, I think for your leg speed training and just it is more important than an hour outside. I hate to say that because I'm not a fan of the indoor trainer, but I think it's far more effective. So how you log training, if you're just logging hours, there is a massive disconnect. Like, I know for a fact if I did 8 hours per week on the trainer versus 8 hours per week outdoors, my 8 hours on the week on the trainer would be so much more effective. And at the moment, we don't really have a coefficient to link those two. Obviously, there are other physiological effects that you don't get on the trainer that you need to get outdoors. So, like, let's say you're training for something like the Fred Whitten, like a sportive, very, very hilly sportive, where you've got repeated climbs above VO2 max at like 20%. You can't really do that on the trainer unless you've got one of those front wheel riser Wahoo thingies. Because you've got certain like muscular adaptations that happen when you are literally climbing with your center of gravity all the way back, and you're sort of clinging on to the bike and like really like pulling with your arms. So 8 hours a week on Fuego flats or whatever it's called on Strava ain't gonna cut it. Like you could train 20 hours a week on, is it called Fuego flats, the flat one, something like that?
I think there's a flat one there, but my favorite is
Tempest Fugit. Yeah. So if you're doing that 20 hours a week and you think, right, I've logged 20 hours a week on Tempest Fugit, I'm going to nail the Fred Whitten. I guarantee when you go to the Fred Whitten after 4 hours of climbing up those fucking steep gradients, your hamstrings, like at the tops, will probably start to cramp. You're like, oh, I've not used this muscle at all in my training. So yeah, there are benefits to outdoors, but I think there needs to be some coefficient to link indoor versus outdoor, at least on the time basis. Yeah, but this brings me on to another quick topic before we wrap up. Like, as a, you know, not being offensive, but bigger gentleman, like we're on the bigger end of the cycling spectrum. Do you have any frustrations apart from like this getting out the saddle thing? Do you have any frustrations with like the bike tech or how you interact with the bike, whether it's like the saddle or the comfort of the bike, or like how do you get on with your bike currently?
The bigger gentleman, a wheel-on drive trainer, never. Firstly, I always felt like I was riding a flat tire on that, but know that I was riding that when I was still 129 kgs. Then I switched towards an actual, direct drive trainer. And that switch actually was part of the motivation that started me riding more, because I just was demotivated by having a wheel-on trainer.
Yeah,
so,
I can remember when I had one. It's just, like, if you got it tight enough so it didn't slip when you were sprinting, then when you were pedaling, it felt like it was like step input rather than actually having the inertia. And then you get off and it's like the whole fucking floor's covered in rubber and it's just shit. It's just, it's terrible.
And I started off without knowing that I needed a special trainer tire for that in the first place, because I burned through my other tire that way. Like literally I had a puncture on my wheel-on trainer as I had a puncture in a Zwift race. Not joking.
That's cool.
But,
I've never had a puncture in a Zwift race. I'll have to use that excuse. Yeah.
I'm going to use it every time now. But a wheel-on trainer is number one of the frustration. I'm never buying that. I'm never recommending that to anyone. Then I look at the actual on-bike. It's like, it's not necessarily a frustration, but it's something I've realized is an issue for me, is that I run out of gears very quickly on climbs. The steeper it is, the faster I run out of it. I think I've got an 1132. I'm not sure about that. So that's the difference between you. I mean, you know every part of your bike. I do not. I bought this bike secondhand in London. Fun story. I wanted the bike that looks good on video. Always important for me. But I wanted I was okay with Shimano 105 and so forth.
Yeah, we'll put a picture of Benji's bike up on screen here so everyone can rinse it down in the comments below. But I think it looks all right. It looks like a 58 or 60 Alley. Is it specialized Alley? It looks pretty good.
58.
He doesn't even know.
But
58.
It's 58, but I'm not sure. I might need a 60. I'm not sure actually.
No, I think as you loosen up and you get a bit more flexibility, I think that's perfect. The Alley is like the entry level ones. If you go to the 60, it'll be too high at the front. I think it's
okay.
I think your bike, from looking at you on the bike, it looks pretty good. Your bike fit.
Okay.
The contact points look to be roughly the right place. I think you might, if you're going into like more climbs and stuff, I think you might want to move further forward on the saddle to get your center of gravity forward. But yeah, I have this issue with gearing, right? You know, like people say, I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying this, but people say like, the Angleroo is the hardest climb in the world, or I name another steep climb. It's like, Hard Knock Pass in the UK is the hardest climb in the world. Blah blah blah. No climb is hard if you have the right gears. You just go slower. But we are still, the road industry is still stuck on selling us gears that fucking pros can ride. So the pros now are on 1134 because of 12 speed.
Yeah.
Most of us riding still around on 11 speed, we're still on 1132 or 1130. And we're on like harder gears than the pros are. This is like, what other sport would you get that situation where you're riding like a more macho thing than the pros? It's crazy. But yeah, if you have a mountain bike set big enough, the Angleroo is not the hardest climb in the world. Something else is harder with lower gears. So it's all about gearing. So there are modifications, and we can chat offline about this, but if you want to change your gearing on your bike, and I think everyone should be riding lower gears. Like I always ride a 11 to 34 on the back. And I'm actually looking to, for the majority of road riding that I do is pretty hilly around like the Lake District in the UK. I'm actually looking to get 1136 or something rigged up on there with an adapter. But yeah,
that whenever the climbs hit, I've got this more. The thing is, indoor I've got virtual gears from the Zwift Hub, but outdoor I'm riding with like the actual gears of my bike, which means that I'm using that 1132, and then whenever I hit a climb, I'm already out of gears at 7%, 8%.
Yeah,
like between 6 and 8%, and that makes it really, because my cadence drops significantly to like 65, 60, and I'm just grinding up a bloody climb. And the most commented thing on my videos is your cadence is shit, and 2, your handlebars are too wide. The handlebars thing is because I've got a 360-degree camera, and that makes it look very wide.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've got the same setup with the camera. It makes it look very odd.
that aside, if I look at the cadence, people are right. My cadence is shit, but on climbs, I just can't do anything about it. It's just,
Yeah.
it's
And
the only
this goes
way
back
I
to what
can.
I said about
Go
training
ahead.
on Zwift. If you're training on Zwift all your training, when you go and get massively under cadenced on a climb, when you run out of gears, you haven't trained for that. It's like that's the first time you've done it all week, and your muscles aren't adapted to that low cadence. So you need to match the kind of gear that you're getting on Zwift to the gear that you can actually pedal in real life. Otherwise, you're training something that is not comparable to the real world. And the only way to do that is to adjust the gearing on the bike. And even if you were to technically, Shimano say the biggest cassette you can fit on your bike is 1134. As a percentage change, that's not that much better. It's you need to be on like a 40. Watts, like, I'm not being funny. Your watts per kilo.
You're right.
And this goes for anyone who's getting into cycling who wants to ride steep hills because they're fun. You know, you need to be at a 40 tooth cassette minimum, and maybe I mean, I'm not an advocate of one by, but maybe the short-term solution to get there, because the bike industry doesn't supply an 1140 and a 2 by road setup, is to go like 1 by. And yeah, you're going to be spinning out at 50k an hour, but newbies ain't riding at 50k an hour in races, so it's not an issue. No, I mean, if you're going to do some more content in Belgium on the cobbles, or Flanders coming up or something, a Peak Talk special build of your bike and get you on a 40 cassette at the back and a GRX front chainring, and you'll just enjoy it. You'll enjoy climbs because you'll know you've got headroom to go into a lower gear. Yeah. Knowing that you're in the lowest gear to start off with is never a nice place to be.
I do have plans to do like a Flandrian challenge, for example, like stuff like that, where I do the cobble climbs in Flanders again, and I did Oude Quademont ones, which is not even steep compared to the others.
Yeah,
that was already hard because I'm running out of gears, and especially with the added cobblestones to it, that makes it a bit harder.
Yeah, I mean, having a rough road surface or cobblestones is like adding gradient. It's analogous to essentially the bike doesn't know if it's adding CRR, rolling resistance, or adding gradient. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Anyway, just talking about, I know you said you were in, I think you were doing some, reporting or something with teams in their training camps in Denia, which is near Calpe in Spain, last week. Yeah. I think I spotted you on Strava or something.
Possible.
I looked at some of the Col de Rates times.
37:55, which is a shit time, but I'm happy with it.
Col de Rates, for people who don't know, is a very popular test climb for training camps in southeast Spain near Alicante, and it's very consistent gradient, very consistent road surface. Very little wind affects it sometimes, so I think it's 6.5k. At around 5% average. Well, you seem to all be about the targets on your content at the moment. So I'm challenging you. I'm throwing down the gauntlet right now before we wrap this up to go sub 21 minutes.
Sub 21 minutes.
Sub 21 minutes.
By when?
And why I've picked 21 minutes is because no time limit. End of the year. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe that's hard because you might not get there again this year. But maybe if you go again,
I'll try go back next year and I'll try it.
Yeah, okay, right. So that's the target. So I've picked that because it's 3.5 watts per kilo. And my theory is that anything above 3.5 watts or 4 watts per kilo, you start to get into genetics.
Yeah.
And I think no matter how hard you train, if you want to get to 5 watts per kilo, you've got to be pretty gifted in terms of genetics. But I think 3.5 to 4 is about your pretty damn good average cyclist who's got their head screwed on when it comes to training. So I don't think it's massively out of the realms. But so I did the watts per kilo on it. It's 3.5 watts per kilo to do sub 21, I think, on that climb, based upon like some guesses of rolling resistance and aero and stuff. But if you, this is the scary thing, Benji. If you stayed at 110 kilos, you're going to have to do 374 watts.
I know.
So
my goal for the end of the year is being under 100 kgs already.
Under 100, okay. So you're looking at about 340 watts or something like this.
Yes, which is still going to be very difficult. Uplift.
Yeah, it is going to be difficult. Yeah.
But hey, if we even get close to it, it's already a major step. I'm always from this. This is going to sound lame, but a friend of mine is a fitness YouTuber, and his concept is, it doesn't matter if we are perfect the next day, but we always need to try and be better than yesterday. And that concept is what I try and push into my cycling journey, where
Yeah.
If I don't reach my goal and I'm 1 watt under it, I'm probably going to be happy because I'm already 24 watts better than when I started. That's the mindset I've got on that. And
Okay.
like, for example, sub 21, sure, I'll try. I'll see how close I get. And the next time I'll try again and I'll see if I can beat it the next time then. And for example, Col de Rates is one of the climbs that I have done multiple times now. I did it for the first time I think in May 2023, where I did it in 1 hour and 31 minutes. And then the next time I did it in July, which was 2 months later, in 1 hour and 23 minutes, so 8 minutes better. The factor to that climb was that I still needed to take breaks on the climb to be able to survive mentally, to be able to feel like, okay, I can do this. I needed to take a bit of a break mid-climb. Then at the end of the year, I did Alpe de Zwift, which I did in 1 hour and 56 minutes, which watt per kilo basis was better than my Ordino climbs. Plus, I didn't take any break on that climb. So that's the upping there. So my goal was to do, I think, Alpe de Zwift in 1 hour 30 or 1 hour 40, which I think I can do if I train.
Concentrate on the outdoor targets first and not the Alpe de Zwift, because on the outdoor targets, if you're going for a time, you can like add a bit of science to help you, whether that be rolling resistance, tire pressures, aero. On Zwift, it is watts per kilo. So if you want any help setting your bike up for those outdoor ones, we can. I'm not challenging you to 3.5 watts per kilo. I'm challenging you to 21 minutes. So how you do that is up to you. So
e-bike.
Yeah. No, we're not doing e-bikes. Just better tires, optimal pressures. Looking at the weight a little bit. But
a lead out by the entire train of Quickstep.
Yeah, lead out from the Coffee Disc team car, that would be fine. But just before we go, we should probably wrap this up. But have you got any questions or anything you'd like to add before we say thank you? And
first of all, I just want to thank you for inviting me. I followed your content throughout the last year and a half, I reckon. The thing for me is that half of the time I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about, but I do find it interesting. Like, for example, I think it's your most popular video, the Hambini BB thingy. Like,
it's crazy how the algorithm works.
For some reason, I enjoyed watching that entire video, despite at first not even knowing what that part was that you were looking at. So
it's crazy. That's one of the highest viewed videos on YouTube, and it's probably one of my worst videos because it was a lunch hour special filmed on my phone. The way I was measuring, you're not going to understand, but run out and tolerances, it wasn't perfect. It was pretty bad actually, because I'm not a QC engineer, I'm a design engineer. But it was pretty piss poor, that video. But YouTube algorithm takes it to the sky. It's crazy, isn't it? There seems to be no correlation on what does well on my channel. It's just at the mercy of the algorithm.
Let's say an average video I post gets like 30k views in a month. And if I then look at specifically the ones that do better are the ones that are on Zwift. So Zwift does better than outdoor content for some reason. I never thought that would be the case. And if I then go even further on that, the content with the best titles and thumbnails are the ones that does best. Like my best video is the video that I named, I raced on Zwift every day until I won. Which, that's a fucking great video title. I started that video with the title. And then I realized, oh fuck, and now I need to race every day.
Yeah, don't hold yourself to anything. Maybe we should start. Maybe I want to start uploading videos where the thumbnail is just a black box, and because I'm not making fucking money out of ad revenue on YouTube, like I never have, never will, and I just do it for fun, and that will cut the deadwood from my subscriber list, wouldn't it? It will just see who's the hardcore engineers who wants to watch 20 minutes of engineering with a black box as the advert. Yeah,
and what's your ambitions with it? Because I know you're engineering when it comes to your usual stuff, and then the content you add on is cycling engineering stuff. But is there an ambition of something you want to reach with it? As in, do you care about the growth of your content?
No, I think this has been said before, but subscribers is the widely used metric for success or content growth, but it's not very accurate. Because,
I agree.
I hate to say this, but I watch channels I'm not subscribed to all the time because they're fed to me in the feed, and you don't need to press subscribe. So I think if you look at my subscribers, it looks like my videos have plateaued years ago, but actually my views are through the roof well, not through the roof, but higher than they've ever been, and they're still growing.
Yeah.
It's opened doors to the cycling industry. So I'm doing consulting work within the cycling industry, whereas normally my engineering is like aerospace or automotive stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's given me so much confidence of just getting feedback. Like you, before I started YouTube, I was actually really shy. I didn't really have much self-confidence, but now when I'm meeting new people, even though when I'm speaking to a camera at home, it's just one-on-one. Actually, it does translate into the real role. So when I'm speaking to new people, it helps me be confident. And getting up in front of a room to do a presentation at work, some people that freaks them out. They hate doing presentations, but it's just like when you do it on YouTube, you're doing it all the time. So it's given me a lot of confidence. But in terms of growing it, I don't really have any targets. I don't put out content for the sake of doing it or for the sake of hitting a threshold by a sponsor. If I don't make content for a month, it's because there's nothing interesting to talk about, and that's how I want to keep it. Luckily, I have a few dedicated fans on Patreon, but they don't ever write and say, "Hey, where's the videos? You said you're going to make videos for us monthly." Well, it's like, do you want me to talk about shit, or do you want me to wait until there's something interesting to talk about? Because not a lot happens in cycling, really. It's not. There are a few big technical developments that come out, here and there, but I wouldn't say it's that riveting. But one thing I don't think I've told anyone yet, and this is exclusive, is that I'm making my own bike frame now.
Ooh.
So I've decided with someone else, I can't mention any names yet, to make a frame.
Okay.
That's not going to be completely radical, but it's going to have all the basics done well. So in terms of the engineering and the QC and the tolerances, it's going to be spot on, and that is going to be the selling point. And it's non-UCI compliant, so you won't be seeing it in any UCI races. And we're doing that to make a better frame. Because the UCI is kind of stifling when it comes to developing aero or weight or structures. So it's non-UCI compliant. It's going to be a bit fun. I'm sure it will sell frames because it's different. But the idea is to make a frame that we want to make. We want to be. I say we, me and my partner. We want to be Mike Burrows Mark II, not Canyon Mark II. Mike Burrows is the crazy kind of guy that did recumbents, and he also was behind the giant TCR. So we're going to do something off the wall, completely wacky. And that's going to be a really busy project for the next couple of years when I can fit it in.
That's pretty cool.
That's the short-term goals. And I hope to, when we get it off the ground a bit more and get the ball rolling, I hope we can do like design forums and put them online.
Yeah.
So every kind of bit we talk about the bike, whether it's just like the bottom bracket standard or the fork integration, we'll do like a design video and then put that online for people to comment and get feedback and stuff. Yeah.
Kind of like a developer blog for a game. Yeah,
and we'll take suggestions and we'll get advice and so we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's
Sounds cool. Pretty hyped about it.
But I think we should wrap it up because this has gone on way too long.
Okay.
For most people, I reckon.
But they're all asleep now.
Thanks very much for Benji for joining us. And if you want to hear more of him, we'll get him back on again. Please let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and give us a heart. See you in the next one. Bye.